Have a seat. I would like to invite Olivia Cowan to come forward and lead us in the pledge, if we'd all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Olivia, I understand that you are helping the troops, and if you would like to tell the audience how they could help you with helping our troops at birthdays and New Year's Eve. Can we get the microphone down for Olivia? She's got it. Let me stand up so I can see you. Come on up here. Come on up here. We'll get you all the way up here. Come on. Right here at the mayor's chair. So everybody can see you, because if you stand on this side of the dais, they can't see you either. Right here. The floor is yours, Olivia. Now tell us about your project. Tell them what you've done. Speak into the microphone.
I gave stuff to the military.
Well, you didn't just give stuff to the military. You had other people give them to the military, didn't you?
Yes.
Now you've got to be a better salesperson than that if you're going to get stuff for the folks that serving overseas. Who did you ask?
My friends that were coming to my birthday.
And how much? What did you send overseas? What is on the TV screen?
Slim Jims.
Is that what you sent overseas?
Yes.
Well, would you encourage other people to do this?
Yes.
All right. And how would they send stuff? How did you get this stuff sent overseas that you got your friends to bring to your birthday party? Did you put it in a box and ship it?
Yes.
All right. Let's have a hand for Olivia. Anything you'd like to add?
No.
Welcome to Roswell City Hall, Olivia. If you'll take this back down to the and they'll put it back up. Thank you, Olivia. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Eichelhardt, second by Councilman Diamond. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding the consent agenda? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Yes.
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
I would just like to make a statement regarding the truth about some incorrect information that was relayed at a prior council meeting regarding a reported recent Supreme Court finding. The United States Supreme Court has not found, ruled, or otherwise decided upon hearing any case regarding municipal prayer. The Supreme Court has not ruled on this matter. There's no Supreme Court decision on this matter. The last time the Supreme Court took up prayer in municipal settings was in 1983, almost 30 years ago, in the case of Marsh v. Chambers. And while the United States Supreme Court has never ruled on prayer in municipal settings, in that case the court decided that the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment is not violated by hiring a chaplain to lead daily prayer in the Nebraska State Legislature. Within the body of the ruling, it was suggested, however, that invocations be non-sectarian and non-proselytizing. There were, however, two cases in January of 2012 that had been ruled upon in the Third and Fourth Circuit Courts against municipal prayer that tried to appeal to the Supreme Court. But as in 99% of the cases that try to go to the Supreme Court, it was not heard. It takes 4 Supreme Court justices to ask to hear a case. These were in the Third and Fourth U.S. Circuit Courts of Appeal, and they do not have jurisdiction in Georgia. The Supreme Court did not take it up. There were no findings, no ruling, and no decision. It has no bearing in Georgia at the appeals level. The case that does apply to us here in Roswell was heard in the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in 2008, 4 years ago. The case was Pelfrey v. Cobb County, and that was the Cobb County Commission. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and that covers Georgia, Florida, and Alabama, held that Governmental bodies in Cobb County may use prayers that include references to specific deities, and it does not violate the United States Constitution. Judge William Pryor wrote the lead opinion and ruled that government should not have any role in determining the content of prayers, and approved a Cobb County plan whereby the commissioners drew names randomly from a list of clergy to lead the pre-meeting prayers. Additionally, information, the Georgia Municipal Association, as presented at the Carl Vinson Institute of the University of Georgia for newly elected officials, provided a sample meeting agenda that includes an invocation. In the city of Roswell, I also want to straighten out something that was said, and that is the matter of having an invocation has not ever come up at a regular council meeting. We have discussed it at committee, but we've never taken a vote at a council meeting on the subject of having an invocation at the start of regular council meetings. The mayor sets the agenda, and he has determined that neither he nor the majority of council wish to begin the meeting with prayer, invocation, a moment of silence, or other words of inspiration. Thank you for this moment of personal privilege.
You're welcome. This time I'll call upon Recreation Parks Department Liaison Councilmember Jerry Orleans. Oh, wait a minute, I've skipped something here. Oh, I'm on the back. Oh, turned an extra page. First, we would like to recognize the City of Roswell employees for receiving the Resource Conservation Challenge Regional Team Award from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And Stu Moran, you have someone to come for us to explain how the Roswell was recognized for this award. I see you didn't bring the award with you. It's a nice big, there it is. Whoa. Show it off. I think it's best just to hold it up. It looks more impressive holding it up.
Well,
there it is for all the world to see.
I'll leave it there, and you can sort of read it. The lighting it makes it challenging. But Mr. Mayor, the City of Roswell is proud to have received the RECRA Resource Conservation Challenge Award. And specifically, this was awarded to our team members, Alice Champagne, Danelle Volpe, Brad Townsend, Gene Rurick, and myself. The four of them actually did work on it, and I signed the application. So I was included. But anyway, Roswell was a prototype community for this endeavor by the U.S. EPA Region 4 to develop a web-based framework to evaluate local processes and how building and zoning ordinances align with environmental goals. Ultimately, the team created a toolkit that is now on the U.S. EPA website so that local communities can assess their alignment of their processes with their goals. And for the City of Roswell, we were the prototype community, i.e. guinea pig, but we had a spin-off from that, which was to create the Lean Kaizen review process, whereby we evaluated city and streamlined city processes to approve land disturbance permits. And council members Price and DiPolito were key members of the process review team and would be far better suited than me to answer any questions about that process. All the same, we are very proud to have been selected by EPA to assist with this endeavor, and even more proud to receive this National Notable Achievement Award.
Well, it's wonderful to receive recognition from the EPA in a positive manner. Let's have a hand for this team in Roswell. Thank you, Mr. Moran. This time, I'd like to nominate Richard O'Donnell for reappointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Do we have a motion? Second. Wait a minute. Motion by Orland, second by Wynn. Yeah. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. At this time, we'll call upon Councilmember Nancy Diamond to call the Community Development Calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item is PV 11-03, Parkway Village Small Tract, 300 East Crossville, Land Lot 447, Kevin Atara. Mr. Bradford.
Thank you.
Townsend is here.
This is an application that was deferred from the December 12th, 2011 Mayor and Council meeting. It is for small tract status at 300 East Crossville. This is the subject property zoning designation. It has an underlying R1 zoning designation. It is within the Parkway Village. This is an aerial photograph showing the existing structures of the homes just north of East Crossville. This is the proposed site plan for the subject property. This applicant is requesting small tract status to construct 3 office buildings totaling 12,000 square feet. This was heard December 12th and deferred so that the applicant could meet with the neighbors and staff. The Community Development Department has determined that the application does not provide sufficient evidence to feasibly to be combined to the adjoining property, and therefore it does not conform with Section 12.210AI of the Roswell Zoning Ordinance. This is the ordinance that allows for properties to become small tract. If they're feasibly combined, then there cannot be allowed small tract status. Because of the feasibility of physically combining it with the adjoining property, it cannot take place. Staff would recommend denial of this application at this time. If you have any further questions.
Council, have any questions for Mr. Townsend? Councilmember Price.
In the past, Mr. Townsend, this has been recommended for approval.
That's correct.
And why do you recommend it not be approved at this time?
The council has determined in prior cases that they felt that it should have been combined and be feasibly combined together with the adjoining properties.
But independently, do you have is there a change in the application that makes you recommend against it this time as opposed to in the past when you recommended for it?
That the council's desire that it be combined.
And can you also tell me the status of the small tract or large tract with the adjacent properties?
The property to the east has received small tract status to allow for the existing building for some parking to be in the front. The property to the west received, I believe, what was that? Adaptive reuse for that to be utilized, the current building and the current use that is on that piece of property. And there's been no change to the second parcel to the east, which is currently used as a single-family home.
And just one more question this time. If all these parcels were assembled, what is the most reasonable size of a property that might be able to be developed? I think you had a picture about that. Maybe you could put that up.
You're talking about the acreage if they combined all 4
Right.
lots.
I mean, because I know that Parkway Village likes you to try to get up to 7 acres, but
If we combine all 4 parcels, we get about 7.5 acres. If we take into the requirement the 150-foot required buffer setback from the Parkway Village boundary line on the east, the north, and the west, the 40-foot buffer track to the front, you're looking at probably less than half of the property even developable with those setback requirements.
so approximately how many acres then?
Of the 7, I would say probably 3, maybe 3.5.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Townsend? Thank you, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you.
This time we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Mayor Council. My name is Kevin Atara. I'm part owner with the property that we've been before you for a number of years, and I want to thank you again for your time. I hope that you all received my. You still can't hear it? Hello? Okay. I hope you received my email over the weekend that I tried to send to you. I'm trying to get my PC set up here, so I put up an overlay to continue the discussion that Dr. Price had, Councilmember Price had, with Mr. Townsend. If you allow me for a minute to get my PC up.
Absolutely.
If we go look at this picture, I believe Mr. Townsend had it up, but this is an aerial picture that I included in the package to you over the weekend. If you look to the left of the property, there is an active stream buffer, which the state and local jurisdiction dictates what's going on. And so I believe there is some setbacks there. And if we include the 150-foot buffer from the residentials that are along to the I believe it's Mr. Mason's property, which I believe is 280 East Crossville. That is the last track on the Parkway Village. If you come 150-foot setback from those 7 residences to the right, and you come all the way to the Mr. Caldwell's property, which is 5 Oaks Nursery currently, and then our property in the center, and the rest of his property is practically in the buffer. I don't see how it is feasible to put these 8 tracks together, have somebody purchase this, and then reduce it down to what we just heard, to about 3.5 acres. So what is the definition of feasible? We've been before you a number of times, and the neighbors in the back have voiced their concerns. They are happy with the 150-foot setback. Unless in the future times, if there's assemblage and this council is going to allow to go into the buffer and build on the stream buffers and do not honor the 150-foot, I don't know how we can possibly assemble this after all these years and after all these tries. We have attempted to talk to Mr. Caldwell. He's absolutely opposing to doing anything with us. I do have a letter from 2009 from his attorney where he offered to purchase our property at about $300,000 per acre, but sell his property for $600,000 per acre to us, along $300,000 moving expense. Recently, Dr. Price, Councilmember Price, tried to set up a meeting December 2011. Mr. Caldwell was not available. I went out of town. That meeting subsequently was called by Councilmember, I believe, Diamond and Mr. Councilmember DePolito, and Fred Fatimi, who is also a partner in the property, attended that meeting. I believe nothing came out of that meeting either. Mr. Caldwell is not interested in combining any properties. Over the years, we have met with Councilmember DePolito, Councilwoman Becky Wynn, and we tried to work in every angle possible. Mr. DePolito had an idea 2 hearings ago that we combine all of this and bring it before the council. We were assured this is workable. But then we came here just to find out before the council that this very same plan that was kind of okay with Councilmember DePolito is all of a sudden is not going to work. So I'm here to ask you, what else can we do as a property owner to satisfy your requirements? We come before you, we meet off-site with all the members. We've shown you here that this stream buffer is ironic that nobody in the staff has even brought that up. This information has been there for a number of years. It is not possible. It's not even a question of feasible. It is not possible to assemble this economically, physically, unless you're willing to go into the environment and tap into that stream buffer. So I ask you, please, if someone can tell me in the council what else we need to do to satisfy you. The neighbors are certainly want the 150 setback, so I assume we're going to honor those white lines tell you the 150-foot setback. That would take away all of Mr. Caldwell's property on 310 Crossville. It will take away all the property on 280 Crossville, East Crossville, completely out of the picture, and then come into 290 Crossville. It leaves about 3.5 acres. At all those prices and all the acreage, and reduce it down to 3.5, how are you going to assemble this? If you were a developer, would you do this yourself? Would you come in here and pay for 8 acres and develop 3? So I'm lost. I know Mayor Wood has told us that ideal for these 150-foot setback for these long lots has been 150 foot, so we honored that. We have met with the water resources. If we get into staff report, I'm somewhat surprised. You have the staff report in front of you, please? If you go to page 3, under Community Development Comments, it states that the Community Development Department has determined that the applicant has not provided sufficient evidence that it's not physically feasible to combine, and it goes on. Well, I want to know what kind of judgment they use, other than the fact that the council keeps repeating it, because they have approved our application 4 times. Now all of a sudden they do not approve it. For what reason? Is it the decision of the council to make that call, or the staff? If it was the staff, we would have liked to work with them to see if we can come up with a conclusion. We have worked with Mr. DePolito at least 4 or 5 occasions. Councilmember Becky Wynn has been present. I have worked with Dr. Price. I have requested to meet other members. I've just not been able to. And if you go to page 3, Water Resources Engineer, it says, the site plan does not appear to allow adequate space to address stormwater requirements for the project. The PW Environment Department does not support the site layout. I'm here to tell you, I have an email here from the same very department that it says, hi, Derek is the engineer who is here tonight. Hi, Derek, this looks good and workable solution for the site. I am comfortable that a solution can be reached to meet the standards of the site and support going forward with the site plan showing. That is the email was sent to us on February 3rd. We find in the staff report that they do not recommend it. Then it goes on to say, we strongly encourage the applicant to set up a meeting. That was what Mr.
Let me clarify that point right there.
Can I continue?
Let me clarify the point right there.
Brad, let's do
staff
this.
report-
I'm going to give him the opportunity to have a full presentation, and after that presentation, if you'd like to clarify something, I'll give you that opportunity. But it's our practice not to interrupt the applicant when they're making a presentation. So
Thank you, Mayor.
Please remind me, and we'll give you a full opportunity to respond.
Thank you.
This is a February, we met, the second bullet point on that staff report says, we strongly encourage the applicant to meet with the department. Well, we just did that. Prior to February, I think it was January 27th, we met. Mr. Brad Townsend was there. The city engineers were there. We discussed items. An email went out on February 1st from our engineer and said, here's the plan. Could you please take a look at it? I'd like to ask the council and the mayor, why is it that we are told that our plan looks good, but then what's in the package and comes before you, it says we have not met, this site plan does not work. We just don't understand it, Mayor. I just don't. I'm not trying to pick on the staff, but how is it that we get an email to say you're happy with the site plan, but then it ends up on a report that is going to recommend to you to deny our application that says we have not met. We met. We had a meeting right here in this building, and we followed up with an email. So I ask you again, please consider these facts. I've sent you a 4-page email over the weekend. We have tried and tried and tried. Councilmember DePolito would like for us to keep talking to Mr. Caldwell. He just is not very interested. I believe there was an email or a letter sent to you guys. He's stated in front of me, in front of his council, he does not want this development, period. And he is not going to sell, and he's not going to buy. We offered him. I don't know if you guys, I know Councilmember DePolito had read my email because I got some comment back from him. Did everybody read that email?
This is not the opportunity for you to ask the council questions. This is your opportunity to make a presentation. And so
I just did not want to go to
everything you have to say, but this is not a question and answer period.
Mayor, I just did not want to take time to go over 4 pages of detailed report to show past history of 5 filings from 2005, even with the original owner, Mr. and Mrs. Sobani, they came before this board, and it was denied. We just at a loss that we don't know what else to do. I believe I've given you all the facts. We have met with the city engineers. We have satisfied the requirement. It is not, tonight we're not here to see if our plan meets all the requirements. I don't have to do full grading, as the Mayor Wood mentioned our last hearing. We're not required to do that by law. We're required to show enough information for you to approve the small tract. Then there is rules and requirements. These are review board. An LDP, land disturbance permit, before it's issued, we must have professional drawing. It must meet every single local and state jurisdiction requirements before we're issued the permit. So tonight we're asking for, the staff keeps talking about all of these items. We know that. We are going to adhere to those. And I'm willing to, if the neighbors in the back have any concerns, I'm willing to put additional trees in that 150-foot buffer. So with that, I'll just leave that up to any questions you might have.
Does the council have any questions for the applicant? Councilmember Price.
There are three buildings on the proposed, do you have a picture
Yes,
of the proposed site plan? And what's the height of each of those buildings?
Single story?
Single story?
Single story buildings.
All single story?
All
three?
single stories. With the exception of the front, because the top 192, we tried to give it a good look. We're going to have a half-floor basement, if you will. And this going westbound on 92, we're trying to give the same look from the side and the front, so the building looks good and it looks good from the neighborhood. So it'll be the one in the center and the back will be one story. The other one is it's considered 1.5 story. The height will not be high because we're going down half a story.
So that's at the road?
Yes, that's the front building.
Okay, thank you.
Does any other council members have any questions? You'll have an opportunity for rebuttal once we hear from the rest of the citizens.
Thank you.
But this will not be an opportunity to bring up new information. It'll be an opportunity to respond to any points that are raised. Thank you, sir.
May I just show something else to the council?
Yes, absolutely.
This is a letter, February 2008, from Mr. Caldwell Council. Because I mentioned, I want to make sure. I'm sorry. This is just want to make sure when I mention what Mr. Caldwell is asking, I'm not just making statement. This is from his attorney to us back in 2008. He wants $300,000 payable for moving expenses, and he wanted 1 year to move. It was impossible to pay all that money and end up with 3 acres land.
Thank you, sir.
I thank you.
At this time, if there's anyone in the audience with any questions or comments, we'll recognize you. Oh, wait a minute. Brad wanted to clarify a point.
Mr. Atari is correct. The staff report is wrong. We should have clarified that the Public Works Environmental has reviewed a plan which they feel would be workable. We did have a meeting on the 27th. Staff should have changed the staff report in your package this evening.
Thank you. Does anyone in the audience wish to comment or have any questions? If you'd come forward and give us your name and address. Yes, sir. One last thing you'd like to add?
No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get
Okay. Yes, sir. If we'd give us your name and address.
Yes. I'm Joe Creech, 275 Putting Green Lane. Part of my property is adjacent to this, and this is James Hogue, who owns the property, the rest of the property.
I'm at 265.
I've expressed my concerns to the council before, and the things that I, as a resident, are concerned about in terms
for the
of this.
benefit of everyone here, and whose memory is not as good as yours, if you have concerns tonight, you need to re-express them.
Good. I will do that. Basically, it's the 150-foot setback requirement. I would like for that to be at least one condition if this is approved as a small tract. Mr. Caldwell has a property which he leases out, which is also adjacent to my property. And when I go out in the morning on my deck, or when I look out my bedroom window or my den window, I'm looking at a big container box sitting on that property right
This on
now,
Caldwell's
and
property?
it's 150 feet away.
This on Caldwell's property?
Yes.
Thank you.
But it's just an example of what can happen when that small tract is there, and there aren't, I don't know whether that's legal or not legal. I have expressed my concern about it to Mr. Call, and he says that he will do something about it. I also have a concern about...
Mr. Townsend, if you could check into that, if there's a violation or not. We'll have that answer for you, if not tonight, sometime in the future. You should know what the answer
I'm very patient, Mr. Mayor, and so I can wait for the
I'm
answer.
not as patient as you are. I hope Brad will have that before this comes back again.
Okay. The other concern I have, based on the most recent proposal at the last council meeting, was that there will be a detention pond in that within that 150-foot setback, which means that we really have a 40-foot buffer, and there's nothing planted in that 40-foot buffer right now, and I'm not sure what all the drainage is going to be in that detention pond and how well it's going to drain, and whether that's going to be a breeding ground for mosquitoes and other pests or not for the rest of the neighborhood. So those are my two primary concerns. I think, as I said at the last council meeting, I think the buildings that are proposed on that site are okay. A lot of worse things could be there, so I'm not complaining about that, but I do feel like it's incumbent upon the council to protect our neighborhood and to protect the residents in that area, and not just listen to developers and development consultants. I think we need to listen to the residents as well, and I hope you will address our concerns. I'll turn it over to Mr. Hope.
Mr. Mayor, Council. Last time when we were here, you made reference about seeing a picture, so I took some pictures this weekend. If I could show those, and it'll kind of show the concerns that we have with the retention pond. Oh, that's not good. Can you see that? That photo is right over the fence that I have right behind the property.
This is taken from the perspective of your house.
Right, yes, sir. Right in the middle of the proposed property, I'm the property right behind it. So my whole backyard butts up against their property. So this is off the center of my backyard looking over the fence. It's difficult to see, but there is an elevation. My concerns, and I think all of our concerns, is the retention pond, like I said last time. This photo... Okay, I can just send the photos back. But if you're looking at this property versus Kevin's property to the right, there's a pretty big decline, and this photo shows about a 5-foot decline in elevation between the two properties. That concern, along with what butts up right to my property, this is that 40-foot buffer, and there's a little bit of vegetation. And along this line here is an elevated part of his property. When you come towards my fence line, you can see from this photo that this is like where the water runs. So there's a decline about 3 feet there. So my concern is with the retention pond, not knowing how that elevation is going to work from when he builds the retention pond within that 150-foot buffer, if that's allowed. Because it shows 40 feet buffer from my property line to where the retention pond starts. And then with the elevation grade is our biggest concern on what that happen with that. These other photos I can pass also. It just depicts some of the trees that are right within that 40-foot buffer, which are dead or dying or small at best. That's all we had, sir, was that retention pond.
Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Michael Curling, and my address is 285 Putting Green Lane. I am Joe and Ann Creech's neighbor. And I have a couple of concerns that they did not voice. Amongst those would be, this multi-tenant development is somewhat different from the other developments in the area that already have small tract status in one case. And some of those things that concern me are, the sort of security lights that would come with this sort of development. Also, kind of the runway, kind of style nature of the property itself is going to have headlights going in directed towards my neighbor's backyards. Those are both concerns that I have. Additionally, if you look at the plan, it looks like the dumpsters are placed as close to our properties as they could put it within their proposed setback. That's another thing I think may be a concern. I don't know what size dumpster comes with this sort of multi-tenant development again. So those are just things that I ask be addressed. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak? Come forward, please.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Marshall Lichtenstein. I live at 530 Meadowglen Trail. My concern is how will this project affect other projects down the road? I wasn't aware that this had been approved before. I thought it had been denied several times and taken to court one time.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So it really hasn't been approved in the past. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. So I'm wondering why would we want to approve it now? The property is a speculative property. It's a speculative investment, and I think the investors knew what they had when they went into it. That they were, faced with the Parkway Village rules. I'm not sure that it's our responsibility as a city to give them approval to make this work. It's their responsibility to make it work. And in fact, other properties along the district have done just that. Recently, there was a veterinarian clinic put in at 40 East Crossville, I believe it was. And other homes, other businesses have gone into these two existing homes on existing property and made them work. So why let this one go the way it's going? Plus, I think if this property goes, then you've got a bunch of other properties along the district, the Parkway Village district, that are going to be right here in front of you within the next year or so wanting the same privileges. Because what you do for one person at one end of the district, I think you're going to have to do for everybody else along the district. So I'm not sure that that's such a good thing to look forward to. I also wondered as I was reading through all this, it sounds like there's been a lot of appeals that have come before the board, and I wonder at what point do we say no more appeals? I mean, there must be some limits, or if there's no limits in place in the law, maybe that's something to be considered. So that, and I'm sure that each one of these appeals must consume a lot of money of the cities, and so I wonder if there's something that could be done to limit the appeal process to one or two appeals and let them go on about their business after that. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir. Come forward. If you'll give us your name and address.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Most of you know me.
For the record,
my name's Richard Mays, and I live at 1155 Martin Ridge Road. I've been a resident of Roswell since 1980. I've lived in the area since 1968. I chose Roswell as my home because of a number of different reasons. It was a good place to raise children. The conservative values of the council, the town, have been very good in the way that I like to manage my life. And one of the things that recently several of you have been reelected to council. One of the things that's been a big push was to be more responsive and proactive to new development and redevelopment. And I'm all for that. I have seen Roswell grow from sleepy two-lane roads. When I moved here, Holcomb Bridge Road was two-lane, East Crossville. These homes that are on these tracks were fairly new when I came here. And I have seen on the east side of Roswell the same type of development with these homes. There was a development a few years back where there were some of these small tract homes that existed on these properties. The type of businesses that were in these homes, one was a outdoor equipment, children's playground type equipment. They were selling totem poles, things of that nature. Most of you probably remember that. Another one was a computer fix-it store. And these were viable businesses inside what used to be residences. Well, this tract is similar to those. And I've listened to Mr. Atara come before council before. I have actually, my company has actually worked with Mr. Atara in developing his plans for this development. And as an engineer, I have seen how he has responded to all of the pieces and concerns that have been forthcoming. And I appreciate the residences that live behind this development. As a small tract, or as a combined tract, this development is going to, it could have more like a shopping center type environment, lots of lights, that sort of thing. As a small tract, what Mr. Atara is bringing forth as a concept is medical offices. Now, the concern about lighting at night, most of the businesses that would go into this are going to be daytime businesses. They're not going to be in and out at night. And so, as far as the traffic, it's going to be mostly during the daytime. I think with all the issues of the adjacent properties and adhering to the overlay district rules and stipulations, which we all appreciate, I think the idea that they're bringing forth is a very good one for that small piece. I see in tonight's presentation, I don't see how it's feasible to join all those properties and make it one big shopping center. And so, as a resident and a long-standing resident, I support this project. And I really want you to think about this in the way that you have all stated in your campaigns, in some of the previous town hall meetings, where you want to be able to redevelop. And this redevelopment will bring in more revenue to the city from the tenants that are in there. It'll bring in more individuals from possibly Cherokee County or others coming to visit a doctor's office or a dentist. When that happens, they'll be spending money in Roswell, going to lunch or whatever you do when you typically go to the doctor's office. So I think it's a very good idea for Roswell to look at this very closely, and in light of what Mr. Atara has presented tonight, I believe you should move forward and grant the small tract status. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir. Come forward. If there's anyone who wishes to speak after this gentleman, if you would try to move closer to the front so we wouldn't take so much longer to get up. I want to try to wrap this up shortly. Thank you, sir.
My name's Bob Cornetti. I've been a resident of Roswell for 34 years. Came here in 1977. My greatest concern is the Parkway Village was established to protect the older developments along 92. I think when we established that, we didn't want to look like Sandy Springs. And those 7.5 acres helped us to imagine that that was going to occur, that somebody's going to have to put something together, that we're going to have a lot of space in there for the parkways and all the parking and everything else. I just seemed like we have to come down here every couple of years and remind the council that this is a parkway project and the 7.5 acres had a purpose to it. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Attar, we'll let you have closing words.
I just want to mention, some of the residents mentioned the fact that 7.5 acre, I believe we've proved there is no such thing. If anybody still feels like there is 7.5 acre to assemble, please, after this meeting, come see me and show me how, and I will try to do it. It is impossible. It is not feasible. I've looked at the definition of feasible in dictionary. It just doesn't fit. I'm sorry. It just does not happen. The gentleman, one of the residents, would appreciate it on 285 Putting Green. I believe trash cans, they're sitting 150 feet away. I believe Mr. Culver's trash can is sitting right on my zero lot line. These are professional office buildings. There will not be security lights. We are talking about 13,000 square foot development with 3 buildings, with offices. We have a partner in this development that is a dentist, that is owner, wants to occupy and develop their own. It's their right to develop their property and practice. It's a dentist. I don't see how that's going to be a problem. But at this point, I would like to have our engineer come up and answer all the detention, all the people mentioned, talked about the detention pond, the water management. Mr. DePolito has always been concerned about grading. Last time he mentioned that I spent a good amount of money. I certainly appreciate your input. And we put the grading plans together. So I'd like for him to step up and make his presentation. Thank you, Mayor.
Can you bring this up? Hi, I'm Derek Westfall with Engineering Design Technologies. I was hired as a civil engineer to come up with some concept site and grading plans per your previous concerns last time we were here. Kevin's bringing up the plans real quick, so hold on 1 second. I got a transparency too. I don't know how that'll... Oh, there it goes. You're good. Sorry. It's a little hard to read, but as you can see from the plan, we're proposing to have 2 detention areas.
If you'll bring the scroll up so we can see the entire parcel, because I just see...
Here, let's do it here.
Maybe if you turned it sideways, you could get it all on there.
Yeah, zoom in a little more. As you can see in the front of the property, there's 2 detention areas. There's a bio...
So there'll be 2 detention areas on the...
Near the road.
Crossville Road side.
Near Crossville Road.
Are there going to be any detention ponds to the rear of the property?
Yes, there'll also be to the rear. One is a bioretention, which serves for water quality purposes.
But if you'll just walk us through this map so we can all understand,
okay.
It's hard to see.
No problem. I don't know. Do you have a pointer? Yeah, there we go. There, let me sit here and do it with the mouse. Okay, as you can see, this little area right here is a bioretention. For those who don't know, a bioretention serves as a water quality purpose. There's natural plantings to help filter out oil, other pollutants, heavy metals to settle out before the water is discharged. This other pond right here is a detention pond, so this will hold the water because of the more impervious area, so we're not discharging as in pre-developed conditions. These two little ponds up here basically serve half the site. The rest of the site drains to the back. This is all to the front right here. It's all draining through grass swales and sheet flow. To the back, just because of the grading of the site, it's all being drained by stormwater pipes. Then we have the same situation in the back. There's a bioretention pond which will help filter out all the water. From the bioretention pond, this treats the little storms, a summer shower, things like that. It treats a one-year storm. And then it goes into the large detention pond. This detains the water. Now, this was a concept plan, but this detention pond is size. It basically reduces the flow off the site by 75%. So the concerns of, additional water, erosion, anything like that, the size of this is drastically reducing the flow off the site. And then we added another concern after we met with the city in our concept meeting. We kind of added a spilling basin. What this does is it basically takes a concentrated flow and turns it into a sheet flow. So kind of think of it like a bathtub overflowing. It's just going to sit there and overflow when the storms come to keep it from being a single discharge point. So as you can see, the whole site's graded out. There's no need for a wall over here or over here. There's a steep slope over here, but no retaining wall. We had to put a retaining wall around the tree areas because that was another concern earlier from council trying to save these trees. We are going to lose 3 of these per the guidelines by y'all because we're impacting more than 20% of the critical root zone. Even though we're doing that, we're still going to try and save them, but we're also providing plantings to compensate for those. So then which is a good segue into the site plan. One second to rotate this. So as for the site plan, let me zoom it in. We are providing adequate compensation for the trees we're losing, also for the area and density we're providing. We're planting shrubs and trees along this slope, trees along the back here. We're also providing, these are all oak trees in between our detention area and the residential areas. This is just a concept plan. We can work with the residents, plant evergreens. There's all different kinds of screening methods to help screen back here whatever the residents would like. We can also move the dumpsters to any different area on the site to alleviate the concerns of the residents. Also, detention, we went with a bioretention because that was a preferred method of the city and water resources. All that detention can be put underground. There's different structural methods to still meet y'all's requirements and also the Georgia Stormwater Manual. So we're willing to do whatever y'all want in terms of that. This is still a concept plan to prove we can fit everything and grade out the site.
Thank you, sir. Is there anything else?
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your time. I know it's been 5 times, 6 times. I hope we don't have to come back here. And we've presented enough information that hopefully Councilmember DiPolito is not pleased. I know he had a lot of concern about grading, a lot of concern. We went back at least 4 or 5 times. I hope we've answered all of that. And I urge you, please consider voting a yes, as assemblage is not feasible.
Thank you for your efforts to work with Mr. Caldwell and your meeting with staff and with council and the neighbors.
Thank you, Mayor.
Right. At this time, will any comments from council before we entertain a motion? Councilmember Diamond.
I have a question. When
Yes.
Parkway Village was created and the lot size was taken into account to create the larger tracks, was that a net 7 acres, or was that 7 acres by plat?
7 acres by plat.
And is Mr. Fatimi here by any chance? Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see that far. I do have one question. We can do that.
Mr. Fatimi, if you'll come forward to the microphone, this Councilmember Diamond has a question.
Yes, my name is Fred Fatimi.
We appreciate you meeting with us a couple of weeks ago. I guess it was 3 weeks ago when we met with staff. I came away from that meeting with a totally different understanding of how it was going to play out, and I want to clarify where you thought it came out, because I thought after Mr. DiPolito talked about a grading plan for all the lots together that might be workable with the neighbors, and there would be some discussion about possibly displacing trucks for temporarily and potentially grading out so that there was possibility for all those lots to be in a better position to be collected together
We
later.
did that. As a matter of fact, our engineer did that. We looked at it when we looked at the stream buffer. Found out that, as a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, that the stream buffer is more than what we expected. If you look at this plan, the stream buffer almost engulfs all the Mr. Caldwell's property, and there's nothing we can do on that side. We do have a site plan designed. Derek, do you have that? That it does show what the Councilmember DiPolito asked me to do. I have done it, but there was no reason to submit that to you because the stream buffer problem. If you can bring that up, please.
I guess I thought you were going back to Mr. Caldwell at that point, because there is still another lot over there, and we haven't mentioned the lot after that on the east side.
But if you look at the design, go ahead, Derek. Can you?
Yeah, let me tell you what I did here. I think this was the part of your packet that got submitted. This assumed, the minimum stream buffer stays somehow. Y'all granted a variance just to show grading was feasible. So it's feasible. Back down here so y'all can see. It's feasible to connect in here with a cross-access easement to this property. This shows a 25 and a 75-foot buffer, which we all know from the previous slides isn't the case. And then it also shows cross-access back here. You can't do cross-access in the front because GDOT, I believe their setback for cross-access in between parcels is 100 feet from the right-of-way. So that would be a concern trying to get the GDOT permit. But this plan basically shows all the interparcel access. Now, I believe Kevin and Fred are willing to give any grading easement, interparcel access easement, because this plan would require a property owner, somebody to own all the properties, to encroach onto the other property. So grading easement would be needed, but it is feasible to grade out all the properties. So that's what this plan, and I think in your package, shows.
I guess I thought that was just the part where the neighbors would then meet to talk about the next step in that, because that was something that I thought Mr. Caldwell had agreed to. Go ahead.
May I answer that? Sure. Since Mr. Caldwell, I did ask to go with the engineer to take some pictures. I believe he did acknowledge that to some correspondence as well. I wasn't about to tell Mr. Caldwell that his property is 100% in the stream. I don't think he's really, he's a good neighbor, but I don't think he would have appreciated if I had told him that his entire property is in the buffer, that I can only get a single story out of him. This information was presented. I did call him. He was not able to meet with me, but this plan, what I understood was Mr. DiPolito had asked that the grading will not work last time. And we spend money and time to show that the grading works. There's nothing to stop Mr. Caldwell on either side of our property to come back and develop this. As the engineer mentioned, I've already told him we are willing to give easements today. Go on the record that we provide cross-access easement for him to build his property out and make this a beautiful development, low density, not a 7-acre big shopping center as the neighbors are. If they are concerned about 2 trash cans, imagine 7-acre shopping center development going in and a security light. So again, This is the best you can do with these properties. Mr. Caldwell is welcome to come back and ask for all sorts of variances from you guys. I know Councilmember Eichelhardt is very into environment. I hope you do not grant that particular variance, at least, but he can certainly do that later and come and develop this. But this is the plan that specifically Councilmember DePolito asked to put together. It is available, and we will issue easement, grant the easement.
I just want to point out one thing. This is a concept plan, so it's just showing the feasibility of grading, not necessarily what exactly could be developed on those other 2 parcels.
Also, I think in this plan, you see, we don't have to go to Mr. Caldwell's property. What our engineers are able to do is show a concept that without disturbing his property, we could give him a grant later on to be able to get our property, cross easement. This plan actually is better than what we originally thought. There's no retaining wall required. There's a retaining wall required on the backside to build the grade up. Instead of us between his grade, we can make his grade to match ours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess since everybody's saying what I said, maybe I ought to say it. One of the reasons I wanted the parties to get together was that it was obvious from the beginning when this project first started years ago that the project didn't comply with Parkway Village. So my suggestion was, is there a way for the parties to work together to come up with a master plan for the entire property that could be built in phases, and maybe that's a way to make this all work as a master plan. So that was the goal of getting the parties together. That was done, and I think the original plan that was looked at was fairly reasonable. The problem was the grading didn't work, and that's why I kept bringing up the grading, not because I didn't think you could grade your parcel. I still have some concerns about that because the grading still, to me, does not look like it's consistent with what's out there today. What did you use as your base for your grading?
This isn't based on tying into the existing grades. This is based on if the properties are both redeveloped.
Well, what do you use for your? I mean, you have to have a base of the existing.
What was the base? For our site, it was survey. Okay. For the other sites where our survey started running out, it was based on GIS and site observations. Okay. So if you see right here, it still works, but this grade's all pushed back because there's a retaining wall right there right now.
Right, and that was really the reason for my question, because there's a retaining wall pretty much all along that property line, so there's a pretty significant.
But that's why we had to come in. See, this is a high. This is all getting taken down. That's hard to read on my own plan. If you see that grade, roughly, see how it goes up, 92, 88. It's roughly 86 right there.
Yes.
So the wall is approximately 4 to 6 feet high when we went back there and looked at it. So that grade is just pretty much pushed forward along the property line where the wall is. So, and if you notice, we're down here at 1088, and the existing contour right around there is 1092. So that's where our parcel access would be.
And also tell them there's a retaining wall on the back side.
Yeah, that's what I was talking. The existing retaining wall.
No, our new retaining wall will create that.
Yeah, and then we had to come in here, and then there's a new retaining wall we're putting in on the back side of our building to go back up. And if need be, I mean, it's all feasible once more accurate surveys attainable. You can see here, there's a 1086 contour here. If need be, we can pull that back some more and change the finished floor elevation of that building. And the retaining wall on the other side of it, over here, would just get larger.
Okay, thank you.
Please turn on your microphone.
Actually, my question is going to be for Brad. Brad, looking at this site plan with the stream buffers laid out, if you had the whole assemblage together, and that's eliminating that much of it to use, I mean, what would staff's recommendation be under those circumstances?
You're asking for staff's recommendation if the property was assembled and the current stream buffer and the current setbacks were
I mean, it can't meet the 7 acres. So, I mean, it appears there's only 2 parcels that could even be assembled.
Right.
Is that a true statement?
All of the parcels can be assembled. It's what criteria and what current government requirements are impeding what develops and goes on them.
You should be up here. You're a good politician, you know that?
I like my seat down here.
I'm just, in looking at this so many different times and trying to put this together and then seeing that a third of it approximately is not even usable.
Right.
It does go back to the question of is it feasible or practical to even do it. So.
That's why they give you the tough questions.
Other questions? Councilmember Price.
Just while Brad's on the hot seat, just one more thing. How long ago was this particular stream buffer identified? I mean, it's not in our packet, and
the adaptive reuse to the west that Mr. Caldwell opened his first operation, I believe, was in 1998. The tributary ordinance was adopted in 2000. So it was existing non-conforming, as the case may be, when the ordinance was adopted.
But I mean, as far as putting this together for any kind of development, I mean, it was known to the department that this land would not be buildable?
The definition of whether it could be buildable as to whether it could be adaptively reused in Parkway Village are 2 really distinct differences. The property is utilized as an adaptive reuse because it was used as a home converted to an office, back behind the office converted to parking and storage for the vehicles. If a person or owner was able to combine the adjoining property owners, then they would have to come in and see what requirements and development limitations would be placed on it. They would have to take into account the current Parkway Village requirements as well as the stream buffer requirements, which
but you could do
definitely inhibit future development in dealing with property.
Right, but I mean, you could do adaptive reuse currently without any other status.
Right.
So as far as moving forward with an assemblage, not to know this information is sort of unconscionable, isn't it? That's unfair to ask you that question, but I mean, I only learned this Friday, and it was not in my packet, and this is pretty critical information. I'm shocked. That's all. I can't say anything else.
Other comments or questions before we entertain a motion? Councilmember Eichelhard.
I guess I originally had a similar question, but was that stream not identified previously? But I think you just answered. But the second question, any property along Parkway Village that's not currently developed would all have to meet the different setbacks and buffers things. So that is something that would impact any property regardless of the size. It would obviously decrease the overall size.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's what that's set up to do. I guess, and we've had some of this discussion before where, how long are we going to allow that to work? And I guess that's one of the questions, not only for this, but for all the things that we're looking at in the overlays. Well, everything's not going to work out exactly every time. It's going to have to take some time to work itself out.
Right.
And if we just throw it out before we let it all work, then I'm not sure any of our long-term plans work. So, something for us to consider. But I guess you answered the question then, that is the same issue that other properties have to deal with.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further comments before I entertain a motion? Councilmember Price.
Yeah, I just want to kind of summarize my thoughts, if you'll indulge me. And I know the intent of the Parkway Village overlay is great, and we have a beautiful corridor there, and I think past councils and present councils have really wanted to preserve that as much as possible, and I certainly applaud the past councils for their prudence to adhering to the vision of the Parkway Village. But I also have to applaud the applicant for their persistence and their thoroughness and responding to the neighbors' requests. I think that the application as coming to us today is a whole lot different than what has come in the past, and we're all just a blip in a time. But I noticed in the historical documents that in 2005, Mr. Caldwell made the comment that someday after he's long gone, they might want to put these parcels together. Well, that's kind of tough for the here and now, and we're dealing with the here and now. We're dealing with a reasonable use of this land with an incredible generous, I think, buffer, since the Parkway Village only requires 40 feet, and we're going with 150. So I think this is very workable and provides a great buffer to the neighbors, and I think he's expressed a great willingness to make these things work. There was another comment in 2005 that said if we allowed a small tract, it would prevent any option for future assemblage. Well, again, we're just a blip in time. In the future, I'm certain that any kind of assemblage is possible, and I don't think we would be preventing that by allowing a reasonable development there at this time. I went out and walked this the other day, and the buildings on all the properties are really pretty awful, pretty unsightly, and I think anything there besides what's there is an improvement to that area. So what it looks like now, I think we can certainly improve on that. And I think if we move forward with this, certainly would be with the understanding that all the Parkway Village conditions would be met aesthetically, et cetera, and that those conditions and any other conditions or easements, interparcel access, et cetera, would be considered. And I know Nancy's ready to write all these things down, assuming that she's going to move forward with it. So I'm encouraged that although there's been some blips with lawsuits in the past, it does leave bad taste in people's mouth. I wasn't around on council when that occurred, and I just hope people can look beyond that and find that we put together something that will be reasonable for this location. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to comment before we entertain a motion? Councilmember Diamond, do you wish to make a motion?
Sure. I lived in this area, but I was not involved in the Parkway Village overlay. But I know from having done the Groveway recently how much time the stakeholders put into this kind of a document and what it means to change it in midstream. Sorry. And to give some flexibility, and keep it from being impossible to do, there are these two provisions. And it concerns me that I really thought we left that meeting that we were all going to be coming together about assemblage. And, yes, it would have been nice to have the stream buffer information when the property owner was in town and available to address it. That's making it difficult for me. I'm also concerned that we're orphaning a couple of pieces over here on the other side, that down the road, that last one in particular, is going to be really difficult to do anything with, and given the way it's all set up. Having said that, this area, as it's emerged, it looks like this may be one of many places that has developed in such a way that we need to take a look at what we can do there. And we're about to embark on our Unified Development Code and give additional options to different properties. And, there may be housing opportunities there. There may be, other things that we haven't had in our code before that may be new options. And since that is imminent, like any day now, soon, we're going to start that. And we're going to be analyzing all the parcels, and I don't feel like we're doing what's best long term for this area. And the benefit of not having been here through all the emotional part is we don't have the frustration and the personal feelings about it. I understand that can be a positive or negative, but I really feel like someday we're going to look at this and need to know that we did the best thing for this area, and I'm not sure we're there yet. So with that in mind, I would move that we deny this application in its present form.
Motion for denial by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito.
Please turn on your microphone. Thank you.
Motion for denial by Councilmember Diamond, second by Councilmember DiPolito. Any further discussion? Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilwoman Diamond. I heard what Mr. May said about development, redevelopment, but we also have to look at protecting our neighbors. And I know Marshall was very intricate in the Parkway Village overlay, and that's how can we have these overlays. It's not development, redevelopment. It's how our citizens felt that this area should be redeveloped. Do we need to look at the Parkway overlay? Might have to, but I think that's what Councilwoman Diamond was talking about, the UDC. All that said, I'm going to have to stick with the Parkway Village and vote denial.
Anyone else wish to comment before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Diamond, DiPolito, Wynn, Eichelhart, Orland. All opposed? Price. Denied 5-1. Gentlemen, you may be excused. We'll continue the meeting. Councilmember Diamond, if you'll continue to call the agenda.
Yes, sir.
Because, folks, if you wish to talk about this, if you'll walk outside and close the doors, you may continue that conversation outside. But I know many of you would like to get home, so you feel free to walk out the door.
This is item RZ 11-15, 11140, and 11160 West Road, Land Lot 46. Mr. Townsend.
I'm going to recuse myself because I was responsible for representing Mr. Broadwell in annexing this property, and I feel that probably would be appropriate to not sit on this decision.
Okay. In case anybody doesn't know, I'm Becky Wynn. I'm Mayor Pro Tem. So this is going to be my first night, so I'm going to rely on these two people on either side of me. So, Mr. Townsend, if you would present, please.
Thank you. This is a proposed zoning for two parcels of property that were annexed from the Cobb County into Fulton County, from Fulton County into the city of Roswell. They do not have a current zoning designation on them, so this is the zoning of the property to bring it properly into the requirements of the city of Roswell. The parcels are approximately an acre in size, so staff is recommending that they would be zoned E2. The Planning Commission reviewed this and recommended they also be zoned E2. Do you have any other questions from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Does council have any questions for staff? Okay, then I'm going to open up the floor for any citizens who would like to speak on this issue. Nothing? Then I am going to ask Councilmember Diamond if she's ready to do a motion.
I move for approval of rezoning from FCA to E2.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. All in favor? Or any more discussions? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
I would like to formally welcome Mr. Broadwell into the city of Roswell. He was recently, he committed a lot of time and effort to actually move the county boundary so he could join the city of Roswell. And we welcome him in Roswell. Welcome to Paris, Texas. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. It's CU 11-06 and CV 11-04, 1565 Holcomb Bridge Road, Heal Our Land Ministries Federation, Inc., Land Lot 613.
This is a proposed conditional use with concurrent variances. This is an application requesting conditional use of an existing building for church offices, and nurseries. They're also requesting variances from the required setbacks to allow for the existing structure that conforms there at this time. This is the location of the property, east of 400, just south of Holcomb Bridge Road. As you can see, the property has two structures on it, a gymnasium as well as an existing building which was used for offices and church facilities. It has commercial to the north, to the east, and has Martin's Landing subdivision to the south and east. Commercial to the west. This is the current zoning designation. It is currently zoned R3. The designation requires that churches have conditional use. Staff would recommend approval of the draft conditions included this evening in your draft resolution for this conditional use. There were 7 conditions placed on this application. One of the conditions, specifically number 4, relates to a condition placed on it by the Planning Commission. In discussions with the arborist, the condition currently reads 30 Leland cypresses. Staff would recommend that be changed to allow different types of green. We don't want all one type of evergreen tree, because if it's diseased or something like that, then they all die. So we were thinking of having at least 2 different types of evergreens instead of all just Leland cypresses. That would be the only recommended change from the draft that's before you this evening. Do you have any further questions?
Yes, Mr. Townsend, I see that the variance is so they can get into the setback with the existing buildings.
Correct. It doesn't have any additional setbacks.
Okay.
Right.
I'm assuming that this church will be using the existing buildings, because I'm assuming if they ever tear down those buildings, then they are now have to conform to the setback?
Yes.
Okay, and they know that. Am I correct?
They do now.
They know that, because one thing I don't want to happen is that they come back because they want to do a new building and they can't, because now they're
Right.
now non-conforming.
This will be to the site plan that's existing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Townsend? Is the applicant here?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, we'll hear from you.
I'm Tad Ransford. I'm the attorney for the Heal Our Land Ministry, the applicant. We are not in opposition of any of the conditions set by the Planning Commission. We also have not asked for any kind of outside lighting or outdoor amplification, like speakers and those type of things. We've met with the 2 of the homeowner association in the area of Martin's Landing, and also talked to a Mr. Crook Foster, who also spoke at the Planning Commission or Planning meeting. So I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Welcome to Roswell. Does the council have any questions for Mr. Ransford? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? We have a motion.
I move to approve this conditional use with application with the 7 conditions set forth by staff, including the adjustment to varied evergreens mentioned in item 4.
Motion for approval with conditions by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Mrs. Diamond, you continue on.
I'm still here.
We're just getting to the fun part.
Yeah.
Steins.
That's what everybody's been waiting for, I know. This will be RZ 11-14, text amendment to the sign ordinance related to the distribution of allowable ground and wall sign square footage, the first reading.
This is a proposed sign code amendment to Article 22 of the sign code. It really does two distinct things. The current code requires that the division of the ground sign and wall sign be split between what the road frontage is for the parcel. That language is being removed. The sizes are still maxed out at the normal 50 feet or 128 feet, depending on the amount of square foot linear frontage that they have. The second part is allowing for a individual establishment to have 3 signs on the facing the street frontage as well as both sides of the building. That building, the signage requirement is determined by the store frontage as it's currently drafted. This has gone through initiation through committee a couple of times, and it is coming to council for first reading. Planning Commission did recommend approval of this proposal, text amendment.
Mr. Davidson, if you read the ordinance.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Roswell zoning ordinance regarding Chapter 22 sign code regarding the distribution of allowable ground and wall sign square footage. Now, therefore, pursuant to their authority, the Mayor and City Council adopt the following amendment to the zoning ordinance. City of Roswell zoning ordinance is hereby amended by amending Article 22 of the City of Roswell zoning ordinance, Table 22.18, subsection 2, ground signs in non-residential zoning districts as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and the City of Roswell zoning ordinance is hereby amended by in Article 22 of the City of Roswell zoning ordinance, Table 18, subsection 3, wall signs in all districts as follows, text of which is again incorporated herein by reference, and have approved this to be the first reading.
Does the council have any questions? Councilman Eichelhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we worked through this process, I think there's just been confusion along the whole way. It was almost humorous reading the Planning Commission minutes where they basically felt the same. And I guess my concern is that we're going to produce something that we're all confused about, and we have enough trouble with things that we're confused about as it is. so to create something that's going to make everybody unsure as to where it's going, I have great concern. So this is an open-ended question. I guess it's up to us to answer. But have we resolved these things to where we all understand, or whomever would come in understands, and our staff would understand at the same time?
I believe staff understands the intent of the ordinance.
I guess the better question is to Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson, have you reviewed the ordinance, and does this appear to be clear in its intent?
It's clear in its intent. It was a long way to get there, but I think the actual writing is clear.
All right. Well, that's the first. I'm still not 100% sure myself, because as someone comes in and asks questions, and we're make sure that we have those right answers. That's my concern. I'm still not sure we're there. So as this is a first reading, I guess that's still my concern, to make sure that we're all sure that we can answer that, whatever questions may be, that it's understood what those things could be. And on the first part, we've talked all along, this is two separate things, and I have no problem with the first of the separating the distance, the square foot based on wall and frontal. But I do have concern about just the overall impact of the second part, because essentially every business in the city can now add more signs, which may be a great economic development for our sign companies. That could be one positive. But one of the things we've had is some control over the signage throughout the city, and I'm just concerned about the proliferation of what could happen with that. And the one building that we had come forward with this, really was generated by another side business putting another sign on the ground that they thought blocked some of that. Right. But I drive by there every day going both ways, and I can see that building and those signs, no problem, either way. And so I'm just concerned we're a little overreacting as to what that ultimate goal really needs to be, and whether we're not just putting more throughout without that good a great an ending purpose. So I'm uncomfortable with the second part, but fine with the first.
Any other comments before we entertain a motion? Councilmember DiPolito.
Yes, I had a question. 128 square feet, is that divided between the 3 signs, or that's 128 square feet per sign? That would be in the case of the third column, the third row.
The 128 is a maximum size of sign. If their building store frontage exceeds 128 square linear feet, then the sign on that wall could not exceed 128 square feet.
Well, I guess my question is, originally, the ordinance the way it's written now, you have 128 square feet total for monument sign and wall signage. Is that correct? The way it's written now.
If you have the ground sign is determined by the amount of road frontage, and it's broken down into different categories.
Yeah, assuming it's 128 feet, just to pick a number. Let's say you're allowed 128 square feet. That's divided between the building and the monument sign.
The way the current ordinance is drafted, this draft will remove that requirement. So they would be able to put all 128 square feet on the ground sign.
Okay, plus 128 on the building, or 128 times 3 on the building?
Plus 128 on the building.
So we're essentially doubling the amount of square footage.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I just think that it's not clear in here, because it's you could interpret it as each sign could be 128 square feet, which would be fourfold what we currently have.
Right.
If you might just change the language, the combined of all 3 signs not to exceed 128 square feet, if it's not already in there. I haven't read the specific statute language. So just make it clear that the combined wall signs are not to exceed 128 square feet, rather than one sign.
We removed some language from the original ordinance that defined that a little bit, so we need to put some of that back in or clarify it.
So on page 4 of the proposed draft, we're looking to make sure that the combined square footage of all 3 wall signs does not exceed 128 square feet.
It doesn't really say that.
This doesn't say, no, that's correct. This doesn't limit that, but that's what you're asking.
For the second reading, let's put it in there.
Do we have?
That's what I'm hearing from council is the combined is not to exceed 128 square feet.
Of the wall signs.
Of the wall signs.
That's
what I'm hearing.
So 128 ground sign, 128 for total wall.
Total wall signage on the building.
Yeah.
Other comments? Questions? Do we have a motion?
I actually thought we were going with a maximum based on the wall that faces the street. So if that wall faces the street is 50 square feet, then that sign can be 50 square feet, the next side can be 50 square feet, the next side can be 50 square feet.
That's how...
No more than 128 on any one side.
So it'd be so you could have 3 signs of 128 square feet.
In a pretty massive scale building. I mean, you're talking about sizable.
That's the way it's written right now.
Yes.
And you'll be making the motion, and council can amend that motion if they wish.
Okay. I move to approve the first reading.
And that is with 128 square feet per side of the building.
As written.
As written. I got you.
And yes,
that's the motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Price. At this time, we'll open it up for any comments from the floor. Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Sign is my middle name. My name is Ralph Mills. I was not aware of this. I'm sorry, I own the property at 23 Oak Street here in Roswell. And I think, Nancy's, motion on this, if I'm understanding it correctly. I guess the second question is, when will this be in writing where we can get a copy of it to review it?
We have it in writing today. After this motion is passed. I'd wait till after this motion passed till we find out how it's been revised. But we have it right now.
Okay, thank you.
So the motion is for maximum 128 square feet per side.
No. Yes.
Yeah, well, it's subject to whatever zoning, but...
Subject to zoning.
Yeah, it is, and it is. It's mind-numbing to go through it all. And we did this. I sat down with some sign people and some people in this industry and talked about how can we clarify it. And sadly, I do think I understand all of it, but it is a shift. And, it's not going to be massive to see in any one direction. I mean, if you can have 128 square feet on one side... It's a big building, and you're not going to see all three sides.
For illustration, what is the dimensions average, 128 square feet, what would that be? What's his example? 10 by 12, that's 120 square feet? That's about, it's a little bigger than 10 by 12. 10 feet by 12 feet.
But if your wall frontage on your storefront is small, it's going to be to scale with that.
Right. It could be smaller, but it could not be any greater than approximately 10 by 12. That'd be the largest it could be. Could be smaller. I'm with you.
And most signs are a lot narrower than they are usually longer.
I understand, but that's just an example. Right. It could be 4 by something else.
40.
40. Okay, Councilmember DiPolito.
Mr. Mayor, just to give you a little bit of perspective, and now that I understand it, I think I'm more comfortable. A bank building is roughly 50 by 100, something like that. So the side facing the street would be 50 feet, so you'd only get 50 feet of signage. But you'd get that on each of three sides. So if you think about a typical freestanding building, they're usually 50 or 60 feet wide at the most.
Just for clarification, if you had a series of several buildings that were in one lot, could you have more than one sign, or they have to be all combined? No, I'm talking about wall signs. Could you have 3 wall signs on one side as long as they didn't exceed the maximum?
Have to be on their
on the wall. It's on the side of the building.
Property.
Different businesses. You might have an end cap. We've got places there 3 stores fronting on the building. Could you have 3 wall signs on those to not to exceed that 128 square feet?
I don't know that we addressed that.
I mean, that happens all the time.
Yeah, I mean that's not addressed here, but we can certainly talk about that. This is part of it. If you've got three storefronts, all one building.
But the center storefront.
Are they single businesses or?
Yeah, single property owner.
Three different businesses?
Would be
3 different businesses, single property owner, all one continuous storefront.
Each business gets its own sign.
Okay. And
based on the linear footage.
Of that business, not of the entire building.
Of the storefront.
Of the storefront. Okay.
With a minimum.
With a minimum.
I see. I got you.
Right. The end ones are going to get side.
I got you. That explains it. That helps me.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second? Does Councilmember Price seconded it, and then we're now in discussion. Anyone else from the floor wish to comment on this? Further discussion by council. Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Maybe for Mr. Davidson, but at this point, is it possible, I don't know, to make an amendment to separate the two? Because I'm fine with the first part, but this second...
We'll vote on them separately.
Scares me.
I'm going to vote on them separately. We're going to vote on separating the monument sign from the wall sign is one vote, and then the vote on the wall sign is it. So we're going to vote separately, just so we can get some better direction for it, so it comes back again. I'm going to vote on this separately. All right, further comments? There are 2 issues. I'm going to break the motion into 2. And Councilmember Eichelhart's excellent suggestion, because I'm dying to get his support on this, on at least half of it. All right, other comments? Here all right, the first thing we're going to vote on is those who support separating ground sign from wall sign. And the ground sign has its own maximum. And that would be 128, the maximum of 128 square feet based upon road frontage. All in favor of that? Councilmember? Yes, sir. We'll have one more comment. Come forward, please. We're desperate for direction.
Lonnie Mims, 1270 Jones Road. And I guess I'm just concerned that this doesn't end up going the opposite direction. Being a retail center owner, we're looking for all the signage we can get, and to not get caught up in viewing the maximum signage on some little freestanding bank building, because I don't think that's the way the math works. Think more in terms of, gargantuan building where you can't even see one side, more than one side at a time. And, try to, I'm assuming that this is expanding where the current code is.
That would be correct.
So I just want to make sure that Mr. Engelhardt, you don't get too caught up in trying to sum of the square footage of all sides doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because you're not going to necessarily be looking at all sides. And instead of thinking in terms of a McDonald's or a bank, think in terms of a 150 or 250,000 foot property. And, the distance from the road, too. It sounds like it's huge when you talk about a 10 by 12 foot sign sitting in front of you, but it's never going to be that close. Even when it's up on the facade, I'm willing to bet that none of you could guess the size of a given sign, that you're going to probably guess that it's much smaller than it really is, when it's up there. When it gets down to sitting in front of you, it's a whole lot bigger than from any distance. So I don't think you're going to be dealing with as much clutter and visual pollution as what you may be thinking.
Thanks, sir. Any other comments from the floor? All right. I'm going to be voting on the portion of the first reading which separates the ground sign from the wall sign and calculating the maximum square footage for the ground sign, and that would be the maximum square footage would be 128 square feet for the ground sign. All in favor of separating the two and allowing the maximum 128-foot ground sign? That would be unanimous. That part is easy. The second vote is all those who are in favor of the ordinance as read, which allows signs on up to three sides of the building based upon the square footage of the storefront on that street, not to exceed a maximum of 128 square feet per sign.
Per wall per sign.
Per wall sign. Per wall. 128 square feet per sign per wall. So you could theoretically have up to three signs of 128 square feet.
Are we voting on your motion or the way it's written?
No, that's the way it was read, as I understand it.
That's how it's written.
That's not the way it was written.
How was it? Is that the way it was written, Councilmember Diamond?
Per wall per sign.
That's your motion. That's her motion. I don't know how it was written. Her motion is, it may not be the way it's written, but the way the motion is to allow up to three wall signs based upon square footage of the frontage on the road, not to exceed 128 square feet per sign.
It's the linear feet of the building.
Linear feet of the building.
Which is different.
The fronting, but not to exceed 128. Is that your motion, Councilmember Diamond?
I was with you till a minute ago. Okay. Yeah.
If you'll rephrase it for me.
Signage allowed on up to three sides of the building based on the linear footage of the store frontage to the road with a maximum of 128 square feet per side.
Per side. And Councilmember Price, you seconded that one, correct?
Well, aren't we approving the whole?
No, we're voting on it. We broke it down in half.
Aren't we approving Table 22, essentially? So why are we having a motion that's defined differently?
Because I'm the presiding officer, and that's what we're doing.
So are we voting on the table separately?
We're voting on that motion, and staff's going to make sure the ordinance is consistent with that, because I've got different interpretations.
I think
Sounds
Becky
good to
should
me.
come back to your chair.
Too late. So the question is, did you say, or are you're just fine for clarification, do you second that part of the motion?
Well, I'm concerned that leaves open a totally new Table 22.
Table 22 will be made consistent with what her motion was, if this is approved.
Well, somebody else can
This
second it.
first reading.
Is there anyone else wish to second that? Dies for lack of a second.
Got to move, she said.
Her motion died for lack of a second. Now you can either revise your motion and make a new motion, or I can hear a motion for someone else.
Not sure what would get a second. I'm not sure what I'm missing here. Okay. My motion was for up to 3 sides of the building can have signs. Each sign is based on the size of the linear footage of the frontage of the building to the street. For instance, 50 square feet on the front means 50 square feet on each side.
50 or linear feet?
Means 50 square feet of sign on each of 3 sides of the building, with a maximum of 128 square feet per side of the building, per wall.
Councilman Orleans.
So to
We're
clarify,
looking for a second.
No, Rich seconded it already.
Dippolito did second it. We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Orleans.
So just to clarify that the sizes of the sign on the side of the building are not proportional to that side of the building. They're proportional to the front of the building, just to clarify.
And you'll just have to have a definition of which is the frontage of the building, because some of them may be on 2 arterials. We'll have to have maybe they get their choice, but you'll have to clarify that.
Maybe as presiding officer, you can just say which one's the front.
There could be 2 major streets, Highway 9 and Councilmember Eichelhardt. He just needs to clarify it.
Thank you for highlighting the fact that this is so confusing that no one's going to know what the end result is. But Mr. Mintz is probably correct.
We have lawyers.
On the bigger buildings that are further back, he's probably right on the sizes. I don't disagree with that. But my concern is the buildings like the ones that really brought all this up, that you're talking, really a substantial amount of new signage throughout that in a lot of places I don't think is justified. So that's my concern.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Councilmember Price.
I just want to ask Brad or staff, based on that motion, do you see any inconsistencies in Table 22?
No.
Thank you.
Further
But we'll
discussion.
look at it if there are.
All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That's Orleans, Price, Wynn, Dippolito, and Diamond in favor. All opposed. Eichelhardt opposed. Passes. First reading passes 5-1. If anyone in the community wishes to look at this ordinance or have further discussions with council, we'll have a second reading in next month, in March. So there's an opportunity to be heard if you wish to be heard on this ordinance.
March 12th.
March 12th.
We're still here. You ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Approval of a text amendment to Chapter 10 of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to license and regulate mobile food vendors in the City of Roswell. This will be a first reading. Mr. Townsend.
Staff has requested to put together regulations controlling mobile food vendors. In the draft ordinance, we include definitions, licensing requirements, prohibited conduct, indemnity, revocation, as well as suspension. We have removed the prior language dealing with the fingerprinting and the investigation requirements as requested by council. We've made other changes dealing with making sure that they do not emit sounds and that they are being able to sell non-alcoholic beverages are included. There was a change made to page 3 of the ordinance, letter K. This deals with the time frame in which the mobile food vendors would be allowed to be licensed. The original time frame was between sunset. They could not be between sunset and 6 a.m. We've added the language unless sales in conjunction with an approved city special event. We're going to add approved city to those words. That is in conjunction when we deal with movie or filming industry, where they are doing night shootings and they can't get to restaurants and things like that, that they want them on site. So that allows for that to happen. If you have any other further questions.
If you'd read that, Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 10 of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances regarding licensing and regulation of mobile food vendors. Now, therefore, pursuant to their authority, the mayor and city council adopt the following ordinance. Chapter 10, Licenses, Taxes, and Business Regulations of the Roswell Code of Ordinances is hereby amended by adding Section 10.15, Mobile Food Vendors, to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the first reading.
Do we have a motion for approval?
Move to approve first reading.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding or comments regarding the first reading of the mobile food vendor ordinance? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Councilman Orleans, liaison to Rec and Park.
Our first item of about 15 for tonight. I'd like to call Jeff up to answer any questions, but it's moving for approval for the mayor and our city administrator to sign a contract with Thurgood Construction for the construction of the Adult Rec Center Phase 1 addition in the amount of $475,100. If anybody has any questions, the professional is here.
Thank you, Mr. Orleans.
Thank you, Jeff.
Our acting director, Mr. Rogers, is trying to get me to deviate from the agenda item and ask for a new sign over at the Adult Recreation Center. But I will follow Mr. Glover's recommendation and stick with the agenda.
That's why we didn't have Mr. Rogers come up to present.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that point of clarification. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Come to you seeking approval of the contract for Thurgood Construction Company. We work with the finance department and the purchasing division of the finance department to solicit bids for the Phase 1 addition of the Adult Recreation Center. We had 17 vendors originally submitted pre-qualification papers. 9 were selected by a committee. The 9 were given an opportunity to submit their RFP. Prices came back in amazingly within budget. So the economy for construction is still going strong. We ask that you approve the contract for $475,100. Those funds are available in the CDBG 2011 grant that we have at the present time.
Do we have a motion?
I move for approval.
Motion for approval by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Eichelhardt. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Councilmember Price.
No, I don't have a question. Can you tell us what $475,000 is going to give us? How many square feet and do any of the walls abut the current building?
I do not have the square footage in front of me. It's the...
What are the approximate dimensions?
It's the width of the existing outside brick patio area. Of course, it's the same one-level structure. It's the expanding of the fitness center.
So we'll fill in the patio area with a fitness center?
Yes, sir. Basically take down the wall that's the outside wall of the existing fitness and open it up.
So it's basically a shell.
Yes.
A $475,000 shell.
plus all the HVAC has to be redone and flooring equipment.
Competitively bid. How many bids did we get?
We received 9 bids.
Was this the low bidder?
Yes, sir, it was.
Wish I'd bid.
Any further questions? Do we have a motion? We got a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thanks, sir.
This time we'll hear from our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on my agenda is approval of amendment to Chapter 22, Traffic and Motor Vehicles of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to allow the operation of pedicabs within the city limits of Roswell. And with your approval, I will go ahead and have the first reading.
Please read.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to allow the operation of pedicabs within the city limits of Roswell. Now, therefore, pursuant to their authority, the mayor and city council adopt the following ordinance. City of Roswell Code of Ordinances is hereby amended by adding the following article to Chapter 22, Traffic and Motor Vehicles, Article 22.8, Pedicabs, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the first reading.
Do we have a motion for approval? Motion for approval by Councilmember Wynn. Is there a second? Second by was that a second by Councilmember Price? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Mr. Davidson, for the audience, would you tell them what the area in which this would be, pedicabs would be allowed if this is passed?
We have a map if they'd like to see it, but it's basically the Canton Street area, Mimosa, Bullock, Oxbow. I think Brad's getting to it.
Oh, I thought I had it.
Oh, well, you want that. Basically in parts of the historic district.
Is there anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next item is the recommendation for closure to discuss acquisition of real estate, personnel, and litigation.
Do we have a motion for closure? Was there a motion for closure? Councilmember Price, is there a second? Councilmember Wynn, all in favor, raise their hands. Approved. We have a work session in room 220 to talk about what a wonderful place Roswell is to visit and how much money we receive from tourism. Good stuff here. Solid. You can bank on it.
Is this y'all's pen?
No, I